The Carfax Abbey Crypt. In daytime, no less. Why it matters what time of day it is when we're in a crypt, I don't know. But anyway, welcome back to Let's Play Bram Stoker's Dracula for the Sega Game Gear. This is the first level in the hard difficulty mode, and it's actually pretty easy as long as you know where that invincibility power-up is, because then you can pretty much breeze through the entire level, as I'm doing right now. And also, the other benefit of finding that is that Van Helsing happens to be in the same room, and so that'll help us out later on. One of the bummers about this game that it doesn't give you any type of sound cue when your invincibility is wearing off, and so it happened to wear off at the worst possible time, which was right when I was about to take down that werewolf. But we're already done with the first stage, the daytime stage, and now we're moving into the nighttime stage. The thing about hard difficulty mode is the levels tend to get harder and harder as we go along, and you'll see that. Coming up here, we are right on this platform, and it's best to get off as soon as you can, because you never know when those heads at the top of the screen are going to shoot fireballs down at you, and it gives you more time to react when you're closer to the ground. And as you can tell, I kind of know what I'm doing here, and it's really hard to react to stuff unless you already are acquainted with the level. And we're at the next Vampire Bride. This one is a sort of snake-like one, and she has a pretty simple pattern. The only place you might get tripped up is that she has two that come from the left, and you have to just pay attention to which one is higher or lower, so you time your jump right, otherwise you'll get hit. But now we're coming into the second half of the level, and that was ridiculously close. I don't know how I managed to get away from that. And we're about to see some pretty ridiculous parts. But first there's a secret here, and we get quite a nice goodie in here, which is that one up right there. Yep, this is probably one of the more ridiculous areas for this jump coming up right here. This is probably the most annoying jump in the game, because if you overshoot it, you'll fall down, and if you undershoot it, you'll fall down. And if you fall down, all that awaits is a long walk back through spikes. And as you'll see here, I don't quite jump high enough that time. So I'm sent all the way back to the checkpoint. But luckily I don't have to go through all the nonsense of fighting the Vampire Bride, or not really fighting, but avoiding. And we're just going to make our way back. So that extra life was pretty much used up right there. And that's an interesting thing. You don't have to jump to get to that platform. It just sort of lowers you. And this is probably the most ridiculous part in the entire game. I don't know what person on the development team thought that this would be a good idea. It's just silly and a waste of time, in my opinion. But we're approaching the end of the level. Once we get past this ghost, we'll enter the room where we'll fight the next boss, and it is Bat Dracula, who is one ugly looking, I don't know, it's just a terrible sprite, and all they do is have the sprite come in and out of the ceiling. As far as beating him, all you have to do is get to one side, throw rocks at him, and you want to lure the bats over toward you, and then run under them before they get too low. The only kind of tips I can offer, you want to try and hit him before he releases the bat so you don't waste your ammo, on one of them. And if you noticed, because we got Van Helsing, I'm getting double rocks now every time I get replenished ammo. So this should make this battle go by much quicker, hopefully. No, it's still taking forever. I lost count of how many times I've hit him. But I haven't lost count of how many times he's hit me. Which is no times. I'm running out of things to say. Thank God this battle is finally ended. And I can run out of the room. Because the invisible wall disappears for the last second or two after you beat a boss. And now we're back in Transylvania, and this should look really familiar. It's the same type of level, background, and I don't know. It's the same design as the first level of the game. Only difference is that now the game has become much more sinister and is really out to get us. I have to wait for that fireball to move. And this is a good place where they try to trap you, because there's a death pit right there, which you can't tell unless you take time to look down, but you can't because there are spikes. So you have to know that you need to jump. But it's not the worst thing. Oh, and here we have a new enemy, which looks like some kind of poo gas. It's very non-threatening, although it is kind of annoying. And at this point I just decided to screw it and make my way to the end of the level, using the last bit of invincibility I had. And now we're in the nighttime stage of Back to Transylvania, and it looks just like the nighttime stage of the first time we were in Transylvania. And it's around this time the game developers clearly thought to themselves that they've been taking it too easy on the gamer so far, and so they've amped up the difficulty. I don't know why I jumped on that skeleton's head. It's just not that kind of platformer. And you're going to be seeing a lot of ghosts in these later levels that just appear out of nowhere and slow down your momentum. And really the only way you can avoid them is to know where they are. But here we are in this next Vampire Bride, and this is probably the fastest one in the game. Just look at this! And it also has a really weird... It has a weird pattern when it shows up in the middle. But I managed to get through it with just one thing left, and I'm just going to kill myself, because there's no way I'm going to get very far with one sliver of health. And if you haven't been paying attention, then you need to note that when you die in this game, your time doesn't reset. It keeps going from where you left off. The only time this isn't the case is if you die from running out of time, or if you use a continue. But if you use a continue, you have to start all the way over at the beginning of the level. This hasn't been very important so far, but in the later levels, in the last couple levels, it makes a big difference. And if you notice back there, the spikes on the top don't really hurt you, they're just sort of there for decoration. And here we have probably the most annoying enemies in the game, those birds. This game is clearly taking, or getting influence from the likes of Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden, because if those birds hit you, you will fall into the death pit. And this should look like a familiar boss to you all. This is Shadow Dracula once again, but this time he's harder because there are 2 platforms instead of 1, so you have to jump or fall down twice to get out of the way. And actually he's not that hard. The only difficulty is right here, once you run out of ammo, you're kind of left up to wherever they decide to put it, like that. There's no way I could get that without getting hurt. And if you're not very familiar with the level leading up to this, you might not have a lot of time left. In fact, there were a couple times I tried to beat this and I just ran out of time. So after I hit him about 50 times, he should go down in a ball of fire, and we can move on to the next area. So after this, we'll take on the last bit of hard mode. See you then.